Little bit of finishing up just to dot the I's and cross the T's, or dot the T's and cross the I's. Cenk, that's how his name is said. Cenk Uygur, they say. It looks like Uyghur. Anyway, Cenk, yeah, I wanted to set that record straight. And I watched not all of it because nobody has recorded or has put it onto social media. The full chat interview that he does with America Fest with this Charlie Kirk that everybody was complaining about. It's quite benign, really. I did think when I watched it, I did think about one of the most powerful things I ever saw when I was 14 was Huey Newton on Firing Line with William Buckley Jr. Massive impact it had on me because as far as I was concerned, and I was 14, so I was just, out of little boy pants. But Huey cleaned his clock. It was extraordinary riffs in the middle of all of that. Really remarkable stuff. He was a young man, and Buckley was always old. So that's that, and we must have all known at that time. So I guess it was in those days it was okay to do that kind of thing. I don't think Cenk, he's not James Baldwin to me, but the Charlie Kirk didn't seem to be the monster that I had been led to believe. He had a sense of humor, which I don't really associate with monsters. And so I would be interested to know whether he is one of those people who says, yes, I am a racist. There was another chap that they both agreed that neither of them would speak to, whose name I forget. He's got a Hispanic name, which is strange. A young chap who's part of the MAGA movement, who has said, yes, I'm a racist, That's not really the point. When I heard Sabs talk about, I'm not sure of her real name, but she's fabulous journalist and talker on the YouTube, and Mark Lamont Hill at the same thing. I have to say that they're both black, and I'm in total sympathy with them, particularly not wanting to or being uncomfortable with what Cenk is doing. And, so maybe it is a job that white people should do, white lefties, those that are left of the lefties. Because I'm not even sure. I think it was very significant what Huey Newton did, and I'm just fascinated. I don't know what was there condemnation back then of what he did? I really don't know. Like I say, I saw this thing and I thought it was a piece of revolution. I was 14. I don't know whether people then were blaming him for kowtowing to the enemy, which he didn't on the show, but neither does Cenk. Cenk is looking for common ground, which I think is a good plan. And I repeat, my notion is your job as a progressive. You might call yourself a progressive. Is your job to convince, to sway, to change the Trump voter, find sympathy with the Trump voter, and thereby not be the demon that they've been led to believe you are? Or is your job to identify them and demonize them? That's just the basic thing. I also, by the by, I went back and I looked at Bringing It All Back Home. On Bringing It All Back Home, Side 1, Subterranean Homesick Blues, Maggie's Farm, Outlaw Blues, On the Road Again, and Bob Dylan's 115th Dream. They are all electric. all rock and roll songs. The album was released March 22nd, 1965. The New York Folk Festival was July the 25th, 1965. So, you tell me, were people going to find unity and solidarity in booing what they knew was coming? I can imagine Dylan being nervous about it, probably, maybe because it's the first time he was doing this stuff live, which is where he really made his huge impact in the previous 3 or 4 years. Oh, so as in the film, and I'm not objecting to the film for being inaccurate. I think that's stop crying. It's a marvelous film for the reasons. I think it's a marvelous film for the reasons that I've given in my previous rant. But so, if they were Dylan fans, they must have been prepped. That's 5 songs out of 11. They must have been prepped for. So, did they go to boo? Did Pete Seeger know? Did whoever the guy who was the fictional somebody probably famous who was actually running the Newport Folk Festival? It's very convincingly done in the movie. A fictional confrontation. So I just I wonder about that, and I wonder whether how much of again this system, this apparently human. I've seen it. We've seen it with certainly with religious mobs, dating back to the beginnings of religion. From the Bacchae on out, we've seen groups getting together and finding a sort of unity in their hatred. It's a very Christian notion, very Christian, because what you do is you satanize the enemy. And I'm not a Christian, and I'm not a fan of Christianity. I'm not a fan of any of the monotheisms, as you all know. But they do seem to unify the congregants around the idea of Satan. So somebody else has to be Satan. And it's a trope. It's a way of behaving. And I was quite surprised. I have been quite surprised that I don't like it. For one thing, in discourse, it turns people into, for want of a better word, bitches. Male, female, whatever you want to, however that's what the verb to bitch is what they end up doing. And it's interesting in the context of Sandel and people babbling on about working class dignity. Well, the least dignified thing that we ever do is bitch. So, all of these entities, these podcasts, these sites, it's tiring. And it seems to emanate from this notion that I am I because I'm not thee. And both sides. There's very terrible people on both sides. And I've run into them on both sides. I don't find, as I've been exploring over these last few writings, I don't find my side any less guilty of this projection of evil than their side. But I know that their side does it because I've seen that too. And it's just this strange thing of people objecting to Dylan, especially in Don't Look Back. No, it's not Don't Look Back, because he did all folk stuff then. That was earlier. I guess that's the 65 tour. It seems that he did all folk then, but though the folk festival happened in 65. And I've just been watching a bit about the tour he did in 66, where he wanted a rock and roll band, and that's when he got with Robbie Robertson and Garth and all that great band. So yeah, and I came across something else. I had forgot, and I just looked it up. Ralph Nader was not invited to the presidential debate in 2000. So tell me again how this is a democracy. The last one the system has allowed was Ross Perot in 1992, who arguably won the game for Clinton. I remember I was here and I watched those debates, and he was deeply effective. Was it because he didn't really challenge the other two, which he didn't? You know, they were all capitalist glorifiers and whatever. But I remember him saying that a vote for hate is not a vote for me. And he got 18.9% of the popular vote. Is that what the system got freaked out about and reacted against? They wanted to reaffirm the two-party system, which again fits in with this notion of God and the devil, this duality that we insist upon, that we insist our lives are defined by. Or to me, the one party with this time around is one party with two genders and personalities. This quote, sacred democracy. Democracy is not sacred. It was invented by humans. It's not a sacred, you can say sacred right to life or whatever it is. You can do all that, but you can't do that with democracy. In fact, I will argue to the end of days that democracy would only ever have been created by pagans, not Christians, not monotheists. And this last sacred democracy with the choice between two genocide supporters, that democracy. I saw the Jill Stein debate. She had a debate, the third string debate, the also-rans, with two libertarian guys back to New Jerusalem types. It was a mess. I remember the two guys as examples of the 18th century. They'll take the compliment. When Euro-white supremacy was founding the nation. I don't even think Trump lovers want that again. A multi-party approach would, of course, rumble the team system. Yeah, that's why we don't want it. We don't, evoking, as it were, the second thought that makes loyalty more complex and makes the enemy that both sides needs so deeply way more confusing, harder to identify. I wonder if that is what identity politics really means. We want to be monolithic, to feel more unified, to identify the enemy more easily. Yeah.